everybody. My name is Alan East. I am the festival programmer for Desperado LGBTQ Film Festival in Phoenix. So we just want to say thank you for being here for our short film Q&A. That's really it. I'll do a little bit at the end, but I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Haas. She is in charge of this question and answer session with you guys. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everybody. It's such an honor. It's such an honor to be able to talk with everybody and get to see you. And wow, I'm very, very excited because these are all like really great films. So here's what I was thinking. I was thinking that we could all go around. I'd like for you to introduce yourself and your film, and then here's what I'd like to hear from everybody first, if you're all into it. What was the kernel of that was your idea? What gave you the idea to tell this story, or what gave you the idea to tell a story that ended up being the story that you wanted to tell? So at first I thought we'd do that. Then I had questions for each of you, and then third I had a question for the women on the panel, and then later the men, or the female identified females on the panel, and then fourth I thought we could open it up for everybody to ask each other questions. So oh my gosh, so I'd love it if you went around. Please introduce yourself, the name of your film, and go ahead and start with that kernel. Erin, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm Erin C. Buckley, and I'm the writer and director of CC Dances the Go-Go. Yeah, I actually made the piece as a short play that we did in 2012, which is crazy, at Dixon Place here in New York City, downtown, at this, Dixon Place, which I'm sure you guys know is like a super queer feminist space here in the city that makes new work. And so my friend Rebecca Whitehurst and I, who plays Cece in the film, I basically wrote the piece for her to sort of try to pimp her out for all of her insane talents. She's an actor and a dancer and a choreographer, and she did a Fulbright in Moscow. So she's just like, all the things that part sort of requires, she sort of is to a T. So yeah, and I think for me, the piece is about sort of walking into a gay bar and sort of feeling seen and reflected and sort of coming into yourself, I guess. So I think that was sort of where the genesis of the piece came from.
Thank you so much. How about Gary? Would you please go next?
Absolutely. So hi, I'm Gary Jaffe. I'm writer and co-director of Last Summer with Uncle Ira, and I'm here with my collaborator, Katie Ennis, who is a co-director and producer and editor of Last Summer with Uncle Ira. So the inspiration for this is, it's a love letter to my Uncle Barry, who died of AIDS in 1991 when I was 3. And it imagines, what if a kid like me were 16 in the summer of 1991 and had the chance to get to know his uncle a little bit. And in that summer that this kid is starting to conceptualize who he is, that's the summer that he has to say goodbye to his uncle. And what would that conversation look like? That conversation that almost gets to the moment of identification between two queer men of different generations. That moment that I didn't get to have, but still misses, but in missing, get something deeper. We like to say, like, a moment to last a lifetime is what this movie is supposed to be about. So that's the short.
And I'm Katie Ennis. I'm the co-director and producer and editor of Last Summer with Uncle Ira. And I will also say that the kernel of the idea actually was a feature film first. Gary wrote the whole feature script, and then we decided to make this short film as a proof of concept.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Erik, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. That's great. I'm Erik Gernand. The film I directed is called Tech Support. It was co-written by myself and Jenny Hagel. The film was actually from 2010, and Jenny and I both lived in Chicago. We were neighbors, and we were in grad school together at the time. And we made a series of 3 short comedies, all lesbian rom-coms. And this is the second of the 3. The nugget of an idea, I remember sitting in Jenny's apartment, and we were pitching ideas back and forth about where we start the game. We knew the actors we wanted to work with, Nikki Lindgren, both of them were from Second City. And we just kind of kept pitching and came up with what became tech support.
Thank you so much. Todd, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm Todd Gordon. My film is Old Hen. The kernel of the story is actually two kernels. One is many years ago, I worked in city government in New York City, a very dark, dingy, bureaucratic office. But in the corner of that office was an older man and an older woman with facing desks facing each other. And their wonderful platonic relationship brought light to that very dark, dingy, kind of unpleasant space. And that stayed with me I'm no youngster, it stayed with me for 30 or 35 years. And I wrote that as a short, and it just didn't have a lot of life to it for whatever reason. The second kernel, which is kind of layered on top, is that I have an old friend who is a cross-dresser. He's male, he's in his late 70s now, he's a cross-dresser. And over many years, we talked about his trials and tribulations coming out and being comfortable with himself, etc. He's heterosexual. By the way, he's not only more than happy for me to talk about it, he talks about it publicly all the time. And so over a period of months, we talked about this original story I had, and we layered on top of that a cross-dressing theme. And in the end, Richard Egan, who was my friend and who was the cross-dresser, became the lead actor. I brought him out of retirement. He hadn't acted in probably 15 or 20 years. So I'm a first-time director, and he's a first-time lead actor in this film. So that's where it came from.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Natalie, can we hear from you?
Sure. My name is Natalie Metzgar. I'm the co-writer and co-director of Immortal. And the concept for this actually started as, similarly to one of the other films, it started as a feature script that Bob and I had written. And, we've always been obsessed with this idea of life extension. Death is one of those things that's like universal, like societal fear, or something that we just are constantly facing. And, we use lots of different ways to try to, process that and come to terms with, the end of our life. And so this idea of being able to extend life, being able to cure aging, and also just the science research that's currently being done around all that, and actually how far it's already progressed, was really fascinating to us. And so we did this deep dive into the science and started talking with the researchers that are currently doing some of this, some of these clinical trials and stuff. And so it was partially that. And then also, I think many filmmakers can relate to this struggle with work-life balance, and, what is the most important thing to give your time and energy to? And is it the work? Is it your spouse or partner? Is it your family? And sometimes those are all in conflict with each other, or also connect in really weird and strange ways. And so it was the combination of fascination with life extension and the struggle with work-life balance that both came together for this short, which we kind of took some of the science concepts and some of the characters from the feature script and wrote an entirely new storyline in an actually completely different genre, trying to contain it more. The feature is this crazy thriller set in the Mississippi Bayou, but this is much more contained, so for us just to kind of test out some of the ideas and the characters.
Thank you so much. And Lorena, and am I saying your name correctly?
You are not, but that's okay.
To whip it on me, how do I say it?
It's pronounced Lorena, and then
Lorena.
If you want to be advanced, it's Lorena, but no bonus points in life, Yeah, my film is The Secret Gardener. I do want to acknowledge everyone has such beautiful reasons and backgrounds, and mine's a lot of caca. I'm a comedian. I've been doing comedy for 10 years, and I'm a Latina. I look like Shia LaBeouf in the middle of quarantine, but I am Colombian. And, a lot of marginalized people, we just don't get, nobody wants to give us money. Now it's very sexy. Diversity is very hot, hot, hot. But when I was writing my film, I was poor, poor, poor. And I was experiencing a lot of straight white women falling in love with me, but in denial about it. We can relate. And I sort of was like, well, wouldn't it be great if I wrote something where the straight woman falls in love with the lesbian and the lesbian breaks her heart? So that's how I came up with Secret Gardener. It's, it's a hot 3 minutes. I wrote and directed and starred in it. I played the gardener. I found a lot of, I found some great straight white women to play the parts. It's really captivating. But no, I think a lot of my stuff is highbrow in origin, and then in execution, it's left of center and dumb. And yes, I really just wanted to make something that was silly, but that I think hit all the marks where, the cinephiles will be like, oh, and then the straight people will be like, I don't understand what's happening. And then the lesbians will still be mad because we're a surly community. But yeah, that's my film.
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I had some specific questions for folks, and please, if anybody has a question, please jump in. I was gonna, Erin, I wanted, here was a question I had for you. Well, first of all, like in CC Dances the Go-Go, like I love that the main character has to take an entire week to write in her journal in order to go back to the bar, in order to go back to the lesbian bar.
That's life.
That's like right. Here's my question, because I have a background in theater and I love the monologue, and I wanted to know what you want the monologue to reveal in film. Do you know, because like sometimes on stage, like the monologue reveals something that we don't get to see, but then we have that information, so it makes it more fun when we see stuff happen. I just wanted to hear where you're coming from with your monologues, and I love them.
Totally. No, that's such a great question. It was so central to sort of figuring out how to adapt the piece from theater to film, because of course I feel like we're less used to see. I mean, I guess through like House of Cards and like that opening monologue in like Annie Hall, it's it's used sometimes and all that jazz. I mean, some of my favorite stuff, ultimately, I guess they do use direct address sometimes to camera. But you're right, it feels like it's a form that's less common, right? Like in stage, we're so used to that. Whether it's Shakespeare or comedy or, whatever. So for me, what I realized, not only in the course of adapting it, but also in shooting it and then in cutting it, which felt like it's a whole nother rewrite that you end up doing, or at least it wasn't my experience with my editor, Summer. I really felt that ultimately the trajectory of the film is Nikki over-processing and being so in her head that she can't get into her body and into her experience. And so ultimately the trajectory of the piece for me is about her going off of text and sort of getting out of the over-processing, which I think the monologues represent, sort of dissecting her own experience and sharing that with the viewer. And then I think ultimately at the end of the piece, she's off text and she's in her body, and she's in her experience and she's connecting with Cece. So for me, ultimately, coming off of text and coming off of the monologue and coming off of the direct address ended up being, her way of actually going into experience.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Totally.
Lorena, something that I loved about your movie, and I wondered if you could speak about it, was that I noticed that the gardener, or from my perception, like really like lived in her body, like she was very comfortable with herself. She was just lived in her body.
Very method,
and that seemed to be like one of the things that was so attractive about her, that she was, she's attractive, but that in fact that she's like in touch with her body. And I just wondered, was that something that you were thinking about when you did the movie? Because the characters at her picnicking or brunching, have a whole different way of presenting themselves physically, and then the gardener's like, I'm here and now, I'm present.
Yeah, it was really difficult for me to embody the character, but that was intentional for sure. So I do love playing with class, right? So I think a lot of Latinos are presented in like, let's say, blue collar positions, and so I really wanted to hide in that, right? So the gardener in this film has like a tank top and overalls, something I never wear. And the straight women that are brunching are all in like very bougie outfits. Like there's a clear difference in color palette. In terms of being in body and being comfortable in her body, I mean, literally I forgot that I had to play this hot person, and I did like a 40-hour cleanse. I was on some type of vegetable juice. I was supposed to take my shirt off. We did not get there because I really forgot what I was like, I'm supposed to have a six pack. Not today, Satan. But yeah, for sure. I think playing with the idea of people being comfortable in their body, that's like very hot. And I think when people are exploring their sexuality, it can feel very on the surface and it's not grounded yet. So yeah, I definitely wanted to fuck around with that because that, to me, being awkward in the body is very funny to me, and seeing the contrast of like the Shane archetype to be like, hey, what's going on? You know? So yeah, it's definitely intentional, and I like playing with that tension in terms of energy difference and also like outfits and, you know, what is the type of like what's the class structure in the film. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Todd, Todd, I wanted to ask you about Old Hen. I like Old Hen is like so riveting because like his well, perhaps the actor who portrayed him too. Do you know what I mean? Like you could. I just I guess I identified with him, like, and he seemed, and maybe he's not, like there seemed to be, like he was kind of alone in the world in terms of his cross-dressing, and like he could only do it in the office, you know, like that was the only place he could do it. And then, but so here's what struck me when his office mate, the woman who he has the very deep friendship with, she says to him, she mentions something to him about cross-dressing, and then she kind of, she's like, almost like, I don't know if that's what you really call it. Do you know that moment I'm talking about? He's like, oh, don't worry. Yeah. Yes, you can call it cross-dressing. Yeah. I was just wondering, like in Hen's mind, what is that how he sees it? Does he see himself in a different, deeper way, or just like as a straight up cross-dresser, if that's even a thing to be a straight?
I think, you know, it's hard for me to answer that without also delving into Richard Egan's life and personality. But my sense is, my feeling about the character is that every day he wakes up, as he says at one point, today I felt like a little bit of me and a little bit of me and a little bit of me, meaning different kind of gender fluid aspects of the same different gender fluid aspects of the same person. So he, just for the edification of everyone else, when he cross-dressed that day, he had fake boobs and earrings, but he wasn't wearing his usual wig, and he wasn't wearing makeup, I think. So and this kind of reflects Richard's life. Someday he wakes up and he's a woodworking guy, and some days he wakes up and he's an elderly woman, and walking down the street with his wife, like two older women. So I don't know, to me, I don't know that it takes on deeper significance. It's very important to Richard and to Henry. The identity of a cross-dresser is very important. The female aspect of it is extremely important, but whether they examine it in a lot of detail, I don't know. It's a great question, but I don't think I'm the right person to answer it.
Well, I mean, thank you for speaking on that. But, and also I just I noticed that, you know, when Hen leaves that at the end of the film and he walks out of the office, he's also like really in his body when he walks down the street in that dress and those, I don't know, the short heels. He doesn't have on super high heels. But you know, like when he leaves that office, you know, leaving his dress on, I was just like he seemed to like be so comfortable in his body.
Right, and that's how he's most comfortable, dressing like a woman, basically. That's where he feels that he's home, so to speak. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Gary and Katie last summer with Uncle Ira. I wanted to ask. Here's what I want to ask you guys. How do you like to work with actors? Right, because the film is so, right, it's so touching, and we know Uncle Ira's going to die, and then you're also working with a younger actor who's playing the nephew and stuff. How do you like to interact and help an actor deliver a performance?
That's a great question. You know, I think we really came at it for 3 different ways for our 3 different actors. The first actor I'll mention, who's not a part of the major conversation, is Tony winner Stephanie J. Block, who we basically had a phone call with. She was like, "I get this woman. Here's my experience as a mother," and then all we had to do was like put the camera on, and there she was. And in some ways, it really helped that that's a mostly silent role, and it's mostly in her eyes. With the very talented Wayne Wilcox and Igby Rigney, who play Uncle Ira and the nephew Daniel, respectively, we did have one rehearsal. We had one rehearsal, but that was really just more to really suss out what's the nature of this backstory, what's the nature of this relationship, and they could kind of act
comfortable with each other.
Exactly. Yeah. We had it right in my living room over here, and just to get them talking, just to get that chemistry starting to brew. With Igby, it was really important that we auditioned that role, because we just needed a kid who could kind of keep secrets from us and who could have this interiority. And Igby, I gotta tell you, look out for him, because he A, camera loves him, and B, he would, even in that audition in live space, he was able to imbue these kind of little words with a real depth. And then once again, all we had to do was turn the camera on him and really sort of, in some ways, just pitch the speed at various moments. With Wayne,
what do you mean by pitch the speed?
Just literally
pace.
Because we didn't want to. I think sometimes we framed it in character purposes. There's not enough time. Get this line out. Make sure he hears it or something like that. But really, it was just to kind of bring the urgency up. It was very superficial, but that was because we knew that he the character was there inside, and we didn't really want to mess with it. And it was a quick shoot, 2 days outdoors.
We basically started by doing we love long takes, so we really we ran that whole conversation through a couple times without even stopping them at the beginning of the day. We just sort of let them naturally live in the scene. And then once we made it through that a few times and we really felt like we were beginning to inhabit the world, then we would jump in and start being okay, let's focus on this, these 4 lines, this back and forth, and let's just do variations on that part of the scene. And that's pace up this section. So we really just kind of we started running it like a play the first half of the day so that they could live in the world. And then we went in and sort of just targeted the performances where we felt we needed to recalibrate. And, but yeah, like Gary said, we did the whole thing in a weekend, in 2 days, where we were fighting the weather and fighting the tides and,
changing.
Yeah. And the sun moving across. So we had a lot going on that day, but we were lucky that we had 3 just phenomenal actors who really brought it.
And briefly, just to speak about Wayne, the one thing that we added for Wayne's process is we had a really nice lunch with him, and we really sat and talked about this man and his life and what he really wants from Daniel, because Uncle Ira, as opposed to Daniel's interiority, is such a kind of charmer, exterior, joke maker person, which of course is hiding an interiority. But we wanted to really make sure that we were all on the same page about what this man kind of does. We went and saw Wayne perform with his friend, this woman who was the original Eponine and Les Mis, and so we really got a lot of Wayne the showman, and then found ways to incorporate that in the space on the day with the way that he's trying to kind of charm his nephew into a real moment that he may not get. But at the same time, it was all about what's under that. But it's also a film shoot, so it's sort of take it, just give me just more options, less time, more options, we'll figure out in the edit. And that's exactly what we did. It's not always a romantic art.
Right. Thank you so much. Erik, so tech support, I sort of had 2 questions. Well, one, it's so very funny when the women are like, well, I drink tea. Well, I drink tea too. One was like, I go to college. I went to college. I just thought that was very funny, so I wanted to mention that. I sort of had 2 questions. I guess the first question was, the women when they're talking on the phone, how did you shoot that? Was somebody always on the other line delivering the dialogue, or I'm just curious how you shot that?
Yeah, we did it. We did single camera with everything, but they were both actresses. We were in Jenny's apartment the whole time. We built the office scene for Nikki in Jenny's living room, and then we did everything else with Jenny around the apartment and then around our neighborhood here in Chicago. But so they were feeding off of each other, but we didn't record them at the same time. So yes, they were always, and they had both toured the Second City for several years. So Jenny and Nikki knew each other very, very well, and they had an amazing comic timing. And then everyone everyone in the smaller parts as well were either friends of ours or people who had worked with Jenny at Second City.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And also, like, technology changes so fast.
Mm-hmm.
What like is there, if you could shoot the film now, just technology wise, mm-hmm. is there something that you would do differently or not, but perhaps mm-hmm. nothing?
Well, the biggest thing is, I mean, we shot that in standard definition. We actually shot it, I think, in 2009. So I didn't have access to a high def camera at the time. So we used the camera that we had, which is what you have to do. So that would be the biggest thing, would be just to have a better definition for the film. But other than that, I think we would otherwise do pretty much the same.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Natalie, so like my mom is very sick now and she's in her 80s and stuff. So she does not have a dementia situation, but so yeah, it was like really it's like really sort of spoke to me when I saw the main character wanting to save, and it's her dad, right? It's her dad. Is that right? Wanting to keep her dad alive. And so, because you mentioned the work-life thing, because here's the thing that struck me the most about the movie is that, like, when the girlfriend, I guess I assume they're girlfriends, they're not married, but she's a girlfriend.
The wife.
Oh, so they are married.
Yeah.
So I was, but at the end of the movie, I was like, wow, she's leaving her. She left her. Do you know what I mean? And I was so mad at the wife. I was just like, this isn't personal. Do you, and so. And the wife seems so selfish, and I guess so. The question is, what do you like as an audience member? I was on board with the main character. When the wife left, I was like, goodbye, you're selfish. Do you know what I mean? And she should stay in her research and stuff like that. And is that your intention?
You know, it's interesting. People take such different perspectives on this film, and
what are some of them? I'm curious. What are some of them?
So some people's perspective is like, how awful is Anna? She's completely like neglected her wife. She's like missed all these things. She's completely MIA, and like she's doing this like mad science research. And then other people are like, no, she's changing the world. She's saving her father. Like, yes, if she's going to be like a little bit, MIA for a few months, that's worth it to change the world and save a life, And so I think it's really interesting people's perspective on it, because they really do fall in these different camps. But I actually fall in a similar category to you, where, to me, it's like, I think the ending in my mind justifies all of what she's done. And like, yes, of course, like, you don't want to neglect your spouse or do these things, but she has achieved something that's, potentially so incredible and, and amazing. But this is, the struggle, I think the fine line that the character of Anna walks is that she's not this like, complete hero. She is someone that is, very much struggling, with these things and might have these like obsessive tendencies that might not be fully healthy, and she has done like some unethical behavior with how she got some of her equipment and, all these different things. And so it's this like interesting line, and people definitely take very different perspectives of like whether what she's done is worth it or not. So I love hearing, your perspective on it.
It was worth it. And she's not an uncaring like, she seems like a very caring person. It was worth it. I'm mad at the wife. How was it working with those mice?
Oh my gosh, the mice were, I mean, they were distracting. Everyone kept on getting distracted by them. They're, you know, they were very adorable. And one of our PAs was like just in charge of like taking care of the mice. But yeah, I mean, it was this like tough thing of, you know, we only needed them for, you know, we shot over the course of a day and a half. And so we only needed them for this short period of time. And we wanted to, you know, do, you know, like just have animals on set in a very ethical way. And so the best thing that we could figure out, which sounds really grotesque to some people, but you know, you actually can buy mice from a pet store to you know, for snake food. And so what we did is we bought these like mice that were supposed to go straight to a snake, and we gave them 2 days of love and petting and gave them their 15 minutes of fame before they were eventually donated to a friend with a snake. So we saved them briefly a few days. But yeah, it was really, like, they were the most charming background I've ever had.
And just quick, because there was so much technical, like all the chemistry stuff, and everything seemed to be enhanced because it was backlit in some way. Like, how did it look so real and good? Was lighting a big part of that?
Yeah. So our cinematographer, Nick Matthews, is just incredible in the way that he uses light. And, you know, because of our longer takes, it was this very much a challenge for him of how to light the house in a way where we could sweep around the entire room and not see any gear, but also have it all be perfectly lit. And so it was a lot of, you know, putting the lights all outside of the house and having it come in these interesting ways through the windows, through the X-rays, you know, stuff like that to, yeah, to like really enhance this like weird, strange lab that she's created in this house.
Cool, thank you so much. And all of you, some of you spoke about this a little bit, but I just wondered if everybody could go around and say, like, how do you know when it's a short film, or how do you know when it needs to be a feature, or is it a short film because on its way to being a feature, or is it a short film because of budgetary restrictions? Some of you spoke about that a little bit already, but yeah, how do you know? That's my question. Like, how do you know it's a short, or yeah, or it's a short that's on its way to being a feature, or I wish it were a feature, but it's only going to be a short. Anyone? I mean, I'd like to hear from all.
I'm guessing the honest answer is that everybody ultimately is wanting to make a feature. So the short film is, it's either like you're in college and you're learning and you're just figuring out how to do these little stories and how to use the equipment, or shorts can be a proof of concept or a feature that you're using, you know, as a fundraising mechanism to just kind of prove like, this is what we do as a director and this is a slice of life from the story. Or, I mean, short films also can just be calling cards for young directors who are trying to show, you know, like, this is the space I want to work in, and I'm trying to get into the film festival circuit and like network and get to know people, like, but you obviously, like, you don't ever make a short film for the money. Like, it's 100% a thing that you're doing because you love storytelling, and it's a means to being a storyteller and optimistically pursuing that career path. So, you know, for us, Gary and I have made a couple shorts, and this is the first one that we've done that's really specifically been like, this is a proof of concept for the feature that we want to shoot next summer.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's almost like I can think of dramaturgically of like two different types of short films. There are short films that are sort of like a dip into a larger world, and those typically are proof of concepts for features or could lead to a feature. So Last Summer with Uncle Ira was written intentionally as a proof of concept for a feature, whereas our first short film, Sunset, which played Desperado in 2017, 2018, something like that, we didn't write it as a proof of concept, but then we found that these characters were so rich that we just were like, well, what, you know, let's expand this world, and we wrote a feature off of that. Contrast it with short film number 2, Next Level Shit, here, we always have a poster ready, was very much conceptualized as like these characters aren't that deep. They're sort of archetypal, but we get this quick 3-act structure, 12 minutes and we're done. And while I could see like operating more in my shit-o-matic universe, as I call it, I don't really need to spend more time with those characters because they don't pass like the dipstick test of like, there's a real depth here. And that's great. Like a 12-minute movie maybe shouldn't have like intensely deep characters. And I know that Katie and I, you know, worked really hard to distill Uncle Ira into something that could be standalone in 12 minutes and not just feel like an appetizer for a richer course. But there are very interesting questions that have to do with this.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I'd love to hear from everybody else. Should I call somebody's name?
Well, I was just going to say that, yeah, I think +1 on everything that the duo said. You're now an improv duo in my head. But yeah, I think for me, the process was very much, I'm very into cutting. I really can't stand when things are, you know, unnecessary. Obviously, yeah, it's not a romantic art all the time, but I think for me, it started off with like, yeah, I just really want to make something punchy that's very much showcases who I am. I'd love to be hot. And then again, I forgot and that, you know, didn't get to execute. But yeah, now for me, this really much is the goal is to make it into a feature and just be like, this is the 3-minute, like fast paced version. Like, let's make a 90-minute. But yeah, I think you guys really, I'm fascinated to hear other answers to this question, but yeah, I feel like everything that they said really hits the mark. You know, do you have money? Do you not? Are you trying to make something to get more money? Do you really just want to say something? Also, like for me, I don't know who's going to give me money for this, right? Like now people maybe, because they're like, yeah, we love diversity. But, you know, when I made it, it really was sort of, you know, I think now it's like you got to get into the business jargon of it, but I think explaining marginalized cultures and I think being a trifecta of that is hard for Hollywood to take in. So you have to be able to sell it in a specific way, and I think now it's possible. But also, like no one years ago was going to give me money to make shit I wanted to make, so you know I had to make it myself.
Thank you so much. I'd like to hear from everybody.
I'll say something. I kind of have a slightly different perspective. I came to filmmaking quite late in life, and I wrote feature scripts for many years, basically alone in a library. And at some point, I just felt that I wanted a more collaborative experience. And writing a short and producing it and then ultimately directing it allowed me to have that kind of collaborative experience with a bunch of younger people who were very competent. Most of them knew more about filmmaking than I did. So it was just a joy for that reason. But I think I'm unique in the sense that I'm coming at it from, you know, after having a career of many years in the corporate world. So it was a completely different sort of need and experience for me.
Cool, thank you so much. I think, yeah.
I think it's an interesting question too, and it was one I was actually talking about with my manager this week, actually, the sort of the nature of when does a piece begin and end, right? Like, so I'm actually working right now on a short form digital series that I shot in January that we released on YouTube in August called Platonic. You can watch it on platonicseries.com. And it's basically 5 to 6 minute episodes. There are 10 of them. And I'm currently actually sort of imagining it into a half hour series. So it's been really interesting to sort of rethink short form into long form. And for that piece, I would say, unlike my short film, Cece, that actually feels, the series, it actually feels like there's room and space to sort of explore and grow because there's a lot of cast and there are just sort of a lot of stories to follow. And then I just think when I dreamed up the short film, it was very much, it just felt like I knew what the beginning was and I knew how it ended up. You know, I knew that she was sort of alone in a box talking to camera, and I knew that she ended up dancing with a go-go dancer, you know. So for me, I think the conversation I was having earlier this week is just about where does the story start and why does the story start, and then where does it go until? And that in a way, that's how you know how long a piece needs to be, is like, how do you sort of articulate that arc?
Thank you. And I think we have 2 more people, Erik and Natalie.
Yeah, I agree with what Erin is saying. When I think about an idea, I try to figure out how hard is the problem to solve. Can this problem be solved in 10 minutes, or is it going to take 90 minutes or 2 hours to solve it? So I do a mix of things. I write full-length plays and screenplays. I'm developing a pilot right now with a producer, but I'm excited to when I come up with a short film idea, because I know something that it's not going to like sit for 3 years and have to go through notes and meetings, and it's not what's going to happen or not happen. But I can just make it happen. I can have the idea. I just finished one. It just finished its festival run called Sundown, and I thought of the idea in January. It was we shot it in the summer and had it premiered later that fall. So I love that with the short you can so very quickly get it done, and you have that satisfaction of making something and seeing it in front of an audience. But for me, it's really it's about the scope of the problem. Can it be solved in a short time, or does it need a long time to solve it?
Cool. Thank you so much. And Natalie.
Yeah, I mean, this is a question that we actually struggled with quite a lot, because we had written this feature script. It had done really well and gotten some awards, and then we were like, okay, great, like let's make it. But we knew that we wanted to adapt it and change it and revise it and make it bigger. Like it was one of those things where we won the gold prize at the Page Awards, and then all these like big studios were reaching out to read it, and the feedback we were getting from all of them is like, oh, it feels really indie. Like, we liked it, it feels really indie. And so we're like, oh, well, like, we just won this big award and got all these studios to read it, but like, now we're being told that we should just like kind of go do it on our own. And so we wanted to dig back in, and as part of digging back in, this short was a way to like really examine what was key in the characters. And we struggled with like, do we just take a scene out of the feature and just, use that as the short? And we've just seen that not usually work as well as like a contained story in and of itself that has its own arc. And that's why we kind of rewrote an entire new film, and it ended up being like a completely different genre. It's more of this like kind of relationship drama in many ways than this like weird sci-fi thriller in the bayou. But it just felt like the most contained story that actually had this like, full arc.
Thank you for everybody sharing that, right? Because I'm assuming filmmakers or people who are on their way to being filmmakers, that's helpful for people to hear about that. And then I have a question. When they said it feels like an indie, it seems so indie, what does that mean? I mean, for us filmmakers out here, do you know, what is that like? What is it they're seeing that they think that they've deemed it indie?
Yeah, I mean, that's like, it was a tough thing that we were trying to figure out for a while. The thing is that we wrote the feature,
that a woman directed it, it's indie? No, I'm totally, I'm joking. I'm not, but I'm sorry, please go on.
I don't think it was that happened before, but I make my bread and butter as a producer mostly. And so I knew as we were writing the feature script of like, okay, how do we keep this in like a budget that's like feasible to do, and how do we keep this economic? And I think as part of that, we had limited the locations, we had limited the number of actors. It didn't have crazy stunts or action. And I think that like that's what they were responding to, is that this is like really interesting story, but it all kind of takes place in this one space. And I think like it was these like big studios that that were reading it, and for them, they wanted to have all all those big things, whereas we were specifically pulling it out to be able to like pull it off. And so I think it's this like tough thing, because we can make that film as a completely independent film and like finance it with private equity and all this stuff, but we were like, well, if studios are interested in this concept, why don't we try to do like the big version where we're not limiting ourselves in any way in the writing process. And so that was like our like page one rewrite that we've done, and now like it's at a place that we're really excited about, that we're going to now take it back to some of those places.
Very cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. I'm just checking. I think we're doing okay for time. Is that I have a question for the women. And it might be different because people might be of different ages and stuff like that. But do you experience like, so I've experienced, right, like, so a lot of projects on stage or film that I've been involved in, which are really interesting and successful and creative and stuff, the process to get there, like the process of the writer or the director to get there, and it's a long process, and a lot of times a lot of people train, you know, you know, go to college or graduate school to study filmmaking or train in some other way, but especially, and I think in those institutions, like I've noticed that those ideas, you know, at the graduate level or even undergraduate level that women are trying to work out, do you know, like get squashed like a cigarette butt. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this isn't perfect, or this isn't the structure a film should be, or this is, do you know, and women more so than men, like, this has been my observation, of course, like you know, their stuff like gets, you know, killed before it even gets off the ground. Like, there's not, I guess, what, I'm not sure how to ask this question, there doesn't seem to be an acceptance or an understanding that I'm working out an idea. No, it's not perfect. It's a work in progress. What about work in progress are you not clear about? Do you know what I mean? Because things have to be works in progress before they can get done. And I'm just wondering if the women have experienced like that process of having to do works in progress leading up to a finished piece, if they've experienced you know, being shut down because it's not perfect at the first time. Obviously that happened to me. Obviously that happened to me. That doesn't mean it had to happen to anybody else, but.
No, I was going to rephrase the question. How many jobs have I lost to mediocre men? And it's a lot. It's a lot of jobs. I don't know. I'm, you know, so marginalized. I'm almost a white heterosexual man at this point, but it's very, I think, intimidating for the industry. You know, if you've been chugging along with just a homogenous group and you're like, you get me, I get you. And then someone else is quote unquote different in whatever capacity. I think you really need to be open-minded and lead with empathy. And a lot of times, especially when it comes to money, you don't have people that have that mindset or that heart to begin with. And so a lot of times you have people, especially because blind arrogance really gets too far in our business. So there's a certain element of like blind arrogance meets, no, I got it, I get it, I know what art is, when really it's all subjective and like, you know, everything changes all the time. So yeah, I think a lot of times in my personal experience, I've come across as intimidating. I don't know why, but I think you have to, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I have this conversation with women a lot, which is like, I just white man the situation now. Like, and during the pandemic, I've just become a 40-year-old white man. I just if this is what I think, this is what I believe in, because everyone really wants to squash your energy and people want to make you second guess yourself, and egos get in the way a lot. But yeah, I think especially women, I think queer people, BIPOC folks, we really fall prey to, I think, getting squashed because our ideas are different and people you're not always going to get the best advice from another person, right? Like if I'm bringing a Latino driven story to a white exec, they're not always going to be the right person. Similarly, I could bring it to a Latina person and they may not be the best person to give me advice on a piece of art because we all have different strengths and toolkits. So yes, I've lost a lot of jobs to mediocre men and I'm not mad about it. But I do think we also have to laugh about it, and that's how you create change, is starting conversation, right? And just being like, hey, optically look at who you're working with, and like actually diversity in every capacity is what makes a great workforce and a great environment to work in, for acting, for writing, whatever it is. And I think it's just about planting that seed in some people's heads who haven't had the privilege of perspective as marginalized folks have had for their whole lives. End of sentence.
Thank you for sharing that. And I want to hear from the other women, and I guess I wanted to add to that, like even in the moment of shooting, let's say a scene doesn't work out and a female director is like, wow, that didn't work, we need to try something different, or like then all of a sudden, like because they couldn't make it work the first time, then all of a sudden like people stop listening to them and they're no longer in charge of the project, you know, when in fact the work that they're doing is going to make it wonderful, you know, is going to make it amazing. But a lot of times people get freaked out if somebody says that didn't work, or I made the wrong choice, we need to reshoot this again, because, and that's seen as like a very, people all of a sudden you're not in charge anymore when you say that didn't work, or I made the wrong choice, we need to do this again. Anyway.
Yeah, that's like I feel like that's the thing that's discussed often is the idea of the second feature, where where women in general have a harder time getting a second feature greenlit because there's less room for mistakes or failure. Whereas like if it's so, I think Lorena, your word of mediocre is really good. If it's so, but but the guy's charming and whatever, then like great, yeah, let's like greenlight him. He's a good guy, he'll learn. And there's a little bit of less of an acceptance for a learning process for women. But I do think that that's changing, and I feel like it's actually changing really fast. One of the things that I've noticed just recently, on top of the Oscars changing, some of their mandates, there's also for like the Spirit Awards, they now require, I just submitted a project for this. So like I submit every year, and it's really interesting how the application process has changed. They now ask for a breakdown specifically of exact percentages of how many women, how many LGBTQ people, how many people of color, how many people with disability, and they specifically break it down for lead characters, supporting characters, above the line crew, below the line crew. And you have to list out your exact percentages for each category. And they take that into account with considering which films to even nominate. So like it's something that all of a sudden, and I know it's even changed how our team is looking at it, because we obviously are always taking diversity into account, across all fronts, across gender, race, sexual orientation, everything. And this was like something of like, oh, let's actually look at our numbers. And it was the first time that I think we had done that breakdown of that like percentages, and like, oh, we're doing like really good in this department, but we're doing less good in this department. We actually really need to keep an eye on this. And so I think just the process of forcing people to look at their data to actually like calculate the like their percentages. I mean, like, a lot of times you hire these big crews and that there are, like you're like trying, for diversity, but like, what are the actual numbers? And I think that is going to force people looking forward, after submitting, it's like their next project, all of a sudden they're going to be very much more mindful of
that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
There's definitely less room for error. Which is interesting because there are so many more opportunities now, and like all of these, movies, TV shows, everything, like there's so many more labs and diversity programs. So there's all these doors opening for women, but I do feel it's very true that there's less room for error, that you really have to come in and like fully execute and earn trust in a way that men don't have to. Like, so there are all of these opportunities, but you're just expected to jump through more hoops before they take you seriously. Like, I work primarily as an editor. Like, that's how I make my money. I work on a lot of like big New York City TV shows. And it's weird how it's still definitely like the TV world's still, the higher ups, it's very much a boys club, the DPs, the showrunners, the directors, and you're a fly on the wall in a lot of these conversations when you're an editor. And I do still hear these prevailing opinions of like, oh, we had to hire a female director to hit this quota. Oh, like, we're concerned about this episode because this young female director is handling it. And like, so we're just really gonna have to handhold her through this. Like, you do still hear that, but at the same time, like, challenge accepted, we can do it. We're gonna do it. We're like, women are tremendous storytellers, and like, I have all the faith in the world, and if you just believe in yourself and you have the confidence and you seek out these opportunities, like, women are making it happen. And like, sure, maybe it's a little harder for us, but like, I guess I like that a little bit too. Like, I like having that thing to push against, and it lights a fire in a way. But everything's changing. The pandemic is changing the whole industry in a way that nobody really fathoms yet. But I do feel like there's so many more opportunities, and it's a bright future you know, female and queer filmmakers alike. So
Thank you so much thank you. Is it Erin?
No, I mean, I really love what you all said. I just, the two things that came to mind for me is, you know, I originally trained as an actor. I went to drama school at Yale, and, you know, my class, when I was class of '06, and there were 10 men accepted, 6 women accepted, you know, and I think now they're much more cognizant of, you know, trans folks, and like, you know, it's not so gender binary anymore. But I bring that up to say that the reason that there were fewer women accepted at the time was because in the sort of classical repertoire, which is what we were training in, there are fewer roles for women. And, you know, now, of course, with like Phillida Lloyd's, you know, cycle of Shakespeare, the Shakespeare trilogy that's all women. And I think we're sort of reimagining, you know, how even those sort of traditionally very male plays can work. But I definitely, feel for me starting to, you know, I transitioned into producing for a while, and then I started writing and directing my own stuff. And so for me, the sort of agency that writing and directing allows versus sort of waiting for the phone to ring as an actor, for me is just like leaps and bounds more agency than I felt just being an actor, just for me personally. And I think also for me, directing and producing and realizing pieces versus just having paper projects, which I think a lot of writers, you know, I have one of my dearest friends has been for years, I'm 15 years now, on the verge of a big breakthrough, I think, with one of his films getting made, but he's been writing, not gotten to see stuff produced yet, you know? So I feel really grateful to sort of have had the opportunity to make stuff so that people can sort of see what you're capable of doing. Because I think that's a totally different connection that the audience is able to have, that the viewer is able to have than just reading something.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just want to add too, like I totally understand, you know, and appreciate like enormous budgets, and you have to make your shots, you know, at the end of the day, and you know, and I realize that like something can, you know, like only 1 or 2 takes, you know, and stuff, but sometimes it looks like it was done in 1 or 2 takes, you know, and moving on, you know. So I guess I find that frustrating. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, what's not that good? It was done in 1 or 2 takes, but that's okay because it has a big budget. I find that frustrating. And then I also want to acknowledge that sometimes something is done in just 1 take, for real. So I know that sometimes that actually happens too. Gals, thanks for speaking about that.
Can I just say, sorry, can I just say one more thing, not to harp on the subject, but, you know, just keep me up at night. I also think what's important as well is I do want to be careful in terms of like, yes, it's harder for us. And so like, we're going to do it anyway. I think the key fundamentally to a lot of that is doors opening up, right? So who's in positions of power and who can you bring up with you? Like truly, I would not have a career in the 90s, right? People would look at me and they'd be like, no, thank you. And like, you know, I had no money, I had no access. These different guys, they just have to write something and it gets read. So I think to Erin's point, like people should feel
we're having a delay.
I'm one person. Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
We had a delay in audio. We heard people should feel, I think, or.
Oh, good. I was saying I was a white supremacist, so I'm glad. No, I'm just saying that like, I think now is the time to really, you can't, just because there's more scholarships and stuff, like I was one person who received a scholarship. There were 200 people that applied. They didn't get that scholarship, right? I'm one person that got to make it, right? And I have a career now, but there's so many people that look like me who also don't have money, who also don't have access. And so I am able to make it because other people are opening doors for me. So I have to open doors for people that are there with me. So yes, it's easier and better, but like, please do not sit on this diversity is hot thing. It's really very much like it's hard. You have to get good at it. And it's super competitive now more than ever. But if you are in a position of power, take chances. And like, God forbid there's mediocre content from marginalized people. It's like, I would love to make a sort of okay TV show and it still air for 5 seasons because white people have been doing it for 100 years. So challenge accepted, but like, you got to keep pushing and you got to open doors for everybody.
thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing all of those things. I want to reach out to everybody, and I'd love to hear what's project is on your front burner or back burner, and or how has the pandemic like shaped what you're going to do next? So I guess the question is, you know, what is your next project or your back burner project, and like, is the pandemic made you rethink how stories or film might be moving forward? I mean, it could be just temporary, right, for a year or two, and then we're back to normal, or the usual. But yeah, I would love to hear from folks. Should I call someone's name? Okay, Gary.
Well, so Last Summer with Uncle Ira, as Katie and I mentioned, is a proof of concept for a feature, and we're still pushing forward on making that feature. We'd love to be shooting it summer 2021. We just had a conversation about maybe COVID will mean 2022, but we're still gunning for 2021. And we really cranked the revisions process from March to May. I joke that productivity is my coping mechanism. And boy, did it help. Living in lockdown, to be able to just be like churning through rewrites. We took the project to the Inside Out Finance Forum in May and to IFP Week in September. And we're excited to say that Last Summer with Ira is going to be one of the Outfest Screenwriting Lab projects, which has been pushed to December. So like, we're just trying to keep that momentum rolling until there's a movie. Maybe it'll be next year that we shoot, maybe the year after that. But God damn it, there's gonna be a movie. So,
yeah, we're gonna make it. It's happening. We're super excited with the script, and we have used this time trapped in our homes to really just like hammer out version after version. And it's given us all this time to do the homework. Like even with IFP Week, like we were able to research every company that we met with and sort of like be able to frame the conversations. And now, you know, the big bummer is obviously that COVID like doubles your budget. So making a first time feature, it's already hard to raise the money. Now you have to raise double the money. So we might, you know, it depends how much enthusiasm there is for it, if we can raise that, or if we're gonna have to wait until like costs go back down. But we're full speed ahead, you know, hearts into this project, and it's gonna happen.
Awesome, thank you. How about Erik? What's on the horizons for you, or what project are you dreaming of?
Sure. Yeah, I feel like this time at home has been a good time for writing. So I had a short that was supposed to shoot this summer, of course, got canceled, and re-envisioned it as a feature. So hoping to try to work towards something in 2022, but we'll see what happens next. But yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Erin, how about?
So the thing I was working on once we went into the pandemic was getting my short form series cut with my editor, who is actually the editor of my short film, and she also starred in the piece, Summer Spyro, and she's just fantastic. So we were working on that this spring, and then we released it in August. So similarly to Gary, I felt really grateful to be on project because it really kept my focus and attention during what I just feel like was such a dark and scary time for all of us. And so I have that out in the world. I got a second season all polished up as a short form. And then I started working with fabulous new managers this fall. And so I'm now working to kind of get the pilot and the pitch all sculpted for that. So yeah, really been working on Platonic a lot. And then I'm also working on a couple screenplays. One is called Older Lady and another one's called Ashram. And I would love to be able to do one of the directing training programs. I'm sort of applying for those. I think that would be really, really, really cool. My mom's an actress, mainly a stage actress, and I really don't know what the theater landscape is going to look like, but a lot of my buddies are shooting stuff already. So it's interesting. I mean, I have a friend who's shooting an Apple TV show right now, and is having to like quarantine for 10 days before his first day on set at a hotel, and like cannot go outside except for an hour of supervised activity, which is insane. So I don't know, like I think none of us knows really what the landscape will look like, but I do think that like we'll be able to get back to shooting things, even lower budget stuff, sooner than I think the theater will be able to return, which is really crazy to think about. But yeah.
Erin, you got to make a sequel to Dances the Go-Go.
I'm game. I'm really game for anything that includes dance in it. So I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Thank you.
Cool. Todd, can you share with us?
Yeah.
What's next?
I'm trying to get the rights to 2 novels. I love adapting novels. The only ones I can really afford are ones that are quite old or out of print or otherwise neglected. So I'm working on those rights. And I'd like to expand Old Hen into a feature. So it was very interesting to hear different perspectives on going from feature to short and short to feature. So that was pretty interesting for me.
Thank you. Lorena, what's next for you?
Yeah,
What are you thinking about or dreaming about? Or
No, I'm doing stuff, kid. I don't know why. I am thriving in the apocalypse. Also, Lorena. Whatever.
I'm sorry,
if you
Lorena.
think Lorena Bobbitt, don't follow that instinct. What a bitch.
Lorena.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know why I talk like a pizza delivery guy. Yeah. No, I truly, I don't know what happened. The pandemic happened, and all I've had are personal pandemics, but the career is happening. I think I'm going to host a game show, so I might be going to LA. I know, keep my career. I mean, but yeah, I actually have a new show coming out of PBS, so that's really exciting because I get to host and write and direct and basically, lose 10 years of my life and stress. But it's really nice to kind of have a baby where you're like, I made this whole thing and, I'm getting paid and power is addictive. But yeah, and I'm in development I used to be a professional soccer player because, I'm a stereotype. And I have a show coming out, hopefully about that, because I used to play in an underground soccer league. Anyway, more on that. Go on my Instagram at Colonial Man page. Have a good time. But yeah, so I got a lot of different pots cooking. Maybe we'll have a rom-com if I don't die from exhaustion. But yeah, thanks for asking. And I'm also really happy to hear that everyone is still feeling creative, because I think that's kind of the main hurdle to battle. You're like, oh God, the news. Oh God, my job. So yeah, I think it can feel really hard during these times, but I think what's most exciting is to create stuff. Hopefully, if you get to create stuff that is hopeful, if you work in the news, I'm sorry, but getting to make stuff that feels hopeful for our communities feels actually really humbling and inspiring in a way where I feel like the Dalai Lama, even though when you watch my film, you're going to be like, that is garbage. But yeah, so it's been exciting to get to do some of that and sort of feel spiritually awakened and at the same time be like, oh God, so tired. But yeah.
Can you reveal the PBS series? Is it revealable yet or not yet? Oh.
It is not, but if you... No, I can't say that. I really am so close to being sued every other day. They're like, you need to stop. But it's coming out soon. It'll be mediocre. Obviously, will you enjoy it? Nobody knows. Who am I? I'm not sure, but I can't reveal, unfortunately.
Not a problem.
It's coming out soon. December. Go on PBS and go at Colonial Man Face for all of the updates. You'll get them all. Hot off the press. Todd, I already see him. He's following me on Instagram. Oh, thank you, Todd. Oh my God. Todd's my manager. Todd, I don't know Todd. Never mind.
Cool. Thank you. Very cool. Very cool. I think Natalie, we haven't. What's next?
I was very, very lucky with the timing of one of my most recent projects. I produced a film that we shot in upstate New York, January 5th through March 10th. We wrapped March 9th. I flew back from New York March 10th, and 3 days later we were in lockdown. But we got everything in the can, which was amazing. We were able to be in post throughout the pandemic, just working remotely. And we actually just finished that film. We're working on like so many festivals, and we just brought on our sales team for that. It's a film that we partnered with Ubisoft, the video game company, on. It's based off of on one of their titles that we're really excited about. And then the feature version of Immortal, we just finished a major rewrite, and we're going to start taking it out, and we're planning on shooting in summer of 2021 in Mississippi or Louisiana. We're still figuring that out. And then I just had a film release yesterday. It's called The Wolf of Snow Hollow. It's playing in theaters across the country. It's with MGM's Orion label. It's also available on VOD right now, so you can check it out right now. It's called The Wolf of Snow Hollow. You can go to thewolfofsnowhollow.com or go to your local drive-in theater or regular theater, but wear a mask. And yeah.
Thank you so much. I had an idea. Do you guys want to go around and do an ask? Like, you know, we don't know who's going to watch who will watch this, but like, right, you know, sometimes how you're like, if so-and-so's out there, contact me, or if anybody has like a 1955 Chevy, I need it for some. Does anybody have an ask they want to put out there? Because who knows who's going to see this?
I guess just follow us at Uncle Ira.
Yeah.
We ask that Arizonans vote the way that we want you to in 3 weeks.
That also.
It's make it happen.
And if anybody wants to invest in indie film, let us know.
And when whip that thing up, the sign up for, so people can, they can. Okay, all right, Uncle Ira. Thank you. So people have a moment to write that down.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I'm ready.
I was going to say, I am looking for on-camera, legit representation. If you are said person and you want to rep me, you're a ding-dong, but I could use it. So please, let's be ding-dongs together. This is a terrible app.
Put it out there. Thank you. Thank you.
You can
Anybody
follow
else?
me at Erin_C_Buckley. On Instagram, and my new series is platonicseries.com. And I normally have neater handwriting, but not today, apparently.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks so much. It's so fun to be part of this festival.
Anybody else? Well, so folks, I mean, those were sort of all the questions that I had, but I mean, could we open it up if anybody had questions for each other or even asks for each other?
I'm just curious where everyone is based out of.
I'm in Brooklyn.
I'm also
Where are
in
you?
Brooklyn.
3 Brooklyns. Katie is in the Bronx.
In the Bronx.
Chicago.
Erik, you're Chicago?
Yeah, Chicago, yeah.
I'm in Westchester County, New York.
Okay. And I'm in LA. I think I'm the only West Coast person.
That's crazy.
Never happens. What if we all actually, me, Erin, and Gary are roommates accidentally? So we just never realized.
You're in the next room.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, you're the person that keeps making all that noise. Yeah.
Empty the dishwasher. It's my day to empty the dishwasher, obviously.
Alan, did you have any questions you wanted to ask folks, or?
No, I think this has been a great conversation, and I just wanted to say thanks to everybody who logged on and contributed. I want to say thanks to Lisa for being our host today. We're excited about being able to, yeah, absolutely. We're being
My pleasure.
excited. Yeah, we're excited to be able to screen your shorts. This is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for programming us.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us.
Kind of business that I got to go through. I just want to say thank you to our sponsors and to Paradise Valley Community College and to the Maricopa Community College District for supporting us for over 12 years now. So thanks to them. And vote. That's right.
Vote.
Yeah, go vote.
Yeah,
Vote.
please vote.
Thumbs up.
All right, thanks,
Thank you very
guys.
much,
Really nice
everybody.
meeting everyone.
And please help
Thank
us
everybody.
on your social media and have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for the great questions.
Thank you for answering them.